Here is a deceptively simple exercise that will help you nail proportions and values in your paintings every time. The 3-value practice. Dead simple but powerful to paint shapes with razor-sharp clarity. Let's break it down today. So you'll need 3 paint tubes: ivory black, raw umber, and titanium white. Super simple. A little gessoed panel for practice, a few brushes, and a model that you can download when you join the Atelier of Figurative Arts. Is free and it's just 1 click away in the description box. First, let's talk about why too many values might ruin proportions for you. If you're familiar with the content of my channel, you may remember that I have a video showing how I got this 3-value painting done from this cast right here. Again, I'll leave a link in the description. And this video was more about controlling blending, edges, keeping values separated to gain clarity. It's very close from what we're doing today, but not exactly the same, because today we'll focus on value shapes and proportions. We'll try to understand how too many values can ruin the proportions. In the early stages of a painting, it's tempting to jump into every subtle change of tone when you see them and start with gradients and transitions, just because you can see them, so you figure, well, let's just do that. But this is where most of the proportion mistakes happen. Here's the truth. Realism starts with good, accurate shadow shapes, and sometimes gradients and value transitions can make it difficult to see the shapes. That's why in this exercise, we practice shapes and accuracy with just 3 main values: light, shadow, and halftones. That's it. We don't need 100 shades of gray, just 3. And don't worry, your paintings will not always look this cut out, because eventually out of these 3 fundamental values, all the others can be recreated, but in an organized manner and with accurate shapes and good proportions. One of the biggest beginner mistakes with values is trying to copy every little shade, every little nuance, without nailing the position and accuracy of the shapes first. A good painting needs good value shapes, and value shapes need clarity. This 3-value exercise is how we learn how to shape this clarity. So how does it work? The idea is super simple. Take a subject, a photo, a cast, a portrait, or a still life, and reduce it to only 3 values. The easiest way to practice this is just to follow the link below and download the assignment sheet that I've created specifically for that. And as you can see, this model has 3 values, not 4, not 5, 3. 1 value for the lights, 1 value for the shadows, and 1 value for the halftones or midtones with no transitions. We don't try to blend really in this exercise. It's like squinting at the world until the noise disappears and only the fundamental structure remains. And it might feel limiting at first, but that's the point. You'll be forced to prioritize shape and value hierarchy. No distraction, just essential light logic. This isn't just about simplifying for fun. The 3-value exercise teaches you how to see big shapes instead of getting lost in details. It also teaches you how to group the values instead of blending them prematurely. It teaches you to build intentional contrast that supports the form and to understand the shape kind of architecture and the logic behind proportion and construction. Now, to be clear, I'm in no way saying that this is how you should build your paintings in general. It would be a pretty inefficient approach. It's an exercise, right? And the focus here is to help your eye see the value shapes and use them to build paintings with better proportions. Of course, here in the assignment plate, the values have been simplified for you, and your next challenge is to become capable of seeing a normal model as a 3-value structure. So after you're done with this assignment exercise, with its already simplified values, you want to try practicing from a normal picture and paint it the same way, like I did here. Your sense of proportions and value shapes should become better every time you practice this way. Now, of course, down the road, You want to try using the same logic, but this time with a reference that has not been simplified in advance. One of your own references. Choose a reference with clear light, like a strong side-lit portrait or a still life. Color filter it in black and white. Then you want to squint your eyes until you see only the major light and shadow shapes. You can use Photoshop if it helps, but don't work from the simplified version as your model. Work from the real normal version just in black and white and try to still find those 3 value groups. Again, always the same light, shadow, and midtone. And you want to paint this entire thing using only those 3 values. No blending, no smoothing of the edges, just flat, confident tones, very, very flat. For each shape, ask yourself which value group it belongs to: shadows, midtones, and highlights. Of course, in the real world, not all edges are so straight and sharp, so you'll have to simplify things. Much like artists who work with spray paint and stencils. If you're not sure which value to use for a given shape, squint and ask yourself what seems to be the closest. And of course, it cannot be perfect. You only have 3 values. It just needs to be close, and you'll see that you can do so much with just those 3 values already. Proceed with flat strokes, avoiding to let the edges blend into each other, which can be quite tricky sometimes because they naturally blend. So you want to try to avoid this. You don't need to force yourself to be extremely flat and sharp. Just try to use flat brushes. Be mindful of avoiding to let them blend naturally when they touch. What's funny is that you see that without even trying, you're already doing some type of blending naturally on the surface, which is already a great indication of how painting works. Another good thing to do is to try to locate the terminator line that separates the shadow area from the light area. If this line becomes soft and if the edge is harder to locate some places, you can cut through the middle with a clean edge with your brush and ignore the soft transition and just with your brush make the demarcation straight. Imagine that you're not painting but rather gluing together pieces of black, gray, and white paper or putting together pieces of a puzzle. So you get the point. Divide the subject into 3 value steps. It's going to be hard at first, especially handling the paint and avoiding to blend. And that's all, that's the exercise. Once you master this, adding more value steps and blending becomes so much easier because you already have good shapes and good proportions. And that's the most important. This is sort of the most essential, fundamental thing that you need to start with the painting. And the values are kind of secondary. The transitions, the gradients, adding extra values, it all becomes easy as long as you have good proportions and good shapes. So now you're not guessing anymore, you're organizing things and the values don't blend prematurely. You'll see how much easier it becomes now that you have those proportional foundations locked in. But you can still use the same 3 value painting while the paint is still wet, and you can add some extra intermediate value steps to increase the roundness of the form, and you can actually start blending right there while the paint is still wet. From there you can, if you wish, but it's not mandatory, add 2 more levels of shading between the halftones and the other 2 values. This will give you 5 levels of value with extra light halftones and dark halftones. And you'll see that already with 5 steps of values, you can obtain a much greater level of depth and volume. And the more values you add and the more precisely you define the shapes, and the more it starts to get some volume, even though there is actually no blending at this point. You can, if you want, try blending the edges to get a more realistic result after that. And you'll see how easy it is.
Remember our starting point. We said that it's easier to draw shapes with hard edges and soften them later than to start with edges that are too soft and try to make them sharper. And with this puzzle-like way of painting, blending with a mixture of the two neighboring areas is enough to achieve very easily a fairly convincing result.
This 3-value practice is deceptively simple, but if you do it regularly, your paintings can become a lot stronger with forms that are more solid, and you'll have a lot more confidence in how you see the proportions of your light and shadow shapes. This is the kind of exercise that Atelier students would have to repeat again and again, and for good reason. It works. If you want to learn more foundational techniques like this one, rooted in classical training but designed for real-world practice, you can join the Atelier newsletter and never miss a weekly insight. I'll leave you with this video to watch next. I'll see you next time, and as always, my friends, joy and inspiration to you. Bye.